Hey everyone, hope you're doing well today. We're going to be continuing in part 5 by adding search functionality to our blog. Now, just to recap, this blog is statically generated, and what that means, we're using the getStaticProps function within Next.js. This is executed at build time. The data is fetched at build time, and this static HTML is then just served to the user. And the keyword here being static HTML. Now, when we talk about searching, of course, on this blog where we have, only a few posts, it might be okay to just filter the static data here. However, I want to show you guys how you would do it with larger sets of data. So an example of how you could simply filter this is, like on my blog. So if I just search for React, you can see it just filters the existing data. And if we look at the GitHub repository for this, you can see if we go to our blog page, you can see we've got the search bar here, this input, and we are getting the data within getStaticProps. We're passing it to our component here, and then this blog post is what we're actually displaying here. Blog posts, we're mapping through the blog posts, and every time the search value will change, we're going through this filter here, and it's literally just filtering what we have, what we've already fetched and passed from the static generation. So there's no data fetching going on when we're doing this. So if we had 100 blog posts, I would definitely set it up differently, but we would be just filtering those 100 blog posts that were fetched. But if we only fetched 10 blog posts and we wanted to paginate it, then our search suddenly wouldn't work because it would only search the 10 that we'd already fetched. So that is actually fine for some use cases. However, we're going to be doing like actual data fetching. We're going to make calls to our content management system to properly fetch our posts. So the way we're going to do that, let me close out of that. Obviously, this is statically generated, and we want to maintain that for search engine optimization and performance as well. So the way we do that is we'll continue to use getStaticProps, and we'll take the data here that we get from build time, and we'll display that initially, and then once that is displayed, any further data fetching we want to do on the client side. So we're going to use SWR, which is a hook. You can read more about it, but it integrates really easily with Next.js. You can see here we do the fetch within getStaticProps. We will pass the initial data that we fetched at build time to our use SWR hook, which will then take over any subsequent data fetching. So an example of that, if you wanted to do static generation, but you also wanted this page to refresh when you came back and focused on it or something, you can do that with SWR. So let's get started. And the first thing we're going to do, of course, is we're going to need a search box. So if we add that in, let's add that in here. So we just want to import like this, and we're just going to do it as a controlled component. So we're going to do import use state from React like so, and then we're going to say const search value and set search value equals use state, and set that to an empty string. And then on the text field here, we'll say the value is going to be the search value, and then on change we want to unchange. There we go. On change, we spelled it right. That's going to take in an event like this, and then we're going to set search value with the event.target.value like so. So we should now have a search box, And if we inspect this and we go to our React DevTools, you can see that our state is updating here upon keystroke. So that is working. That's how you do a simple, I guess, input field with React. Now I want to do some simple styles for this. So first of all, I just want to do outline none. We can add a ring when we focus. So we'll do a ring 2 and then ring dash, I don't know, gray 900. It's a pretty dark website, isn't it? Make this full width. We'll make it rounded. Do a border gray 200, something like this. And we need to add border. And then we can increase the height of that. Then we maybe can just put some padding on the left. We can do large text. And we can do maybe text gray 800. And then we can also add placeholder, search blog posts, like so. So I think that is fairly good. We don't want this margin particularly now. And then actually we could do with just having a title the blog, and we can make that text 5XL, text gray, I don't know, 600. I don't like font serif, I don't know. The blog. Okay, it looks amazing. I'm being a little bit sarcastic there. Cool. So I think this is relatively acceptable. However, it doesn't do anything just now. So let's make this work. So at the moment, where we're fetching our data, we're using this getPost function, which is using the request library and executing this function. Now we want to do the same thing. However, I'm going to pull it into this file here. Into our index. So let's import, and we can do request from GraphQL request like so. And what I want to do is create a fetcher function. So fetcher is going to be, and the fetcher function, the request function essentially takes in the endpoint, the query, and then we're going to pass the variables as well. So our fetcher function is going to take the same, the endpoint, the query, and then variables. And basically, we're going to use the request and pass that the endpoint, query, and variables, like so. We don't need this getPost function now. So instead of awaiting getPost, we're going to await fetcher. And then we're going to give it the endpoint, which is going to be the same. It's always the same because it's GraphQL. And then the query, which is the getPost query. So we just take everything inside here, just format that, and we should be good. So we're not passing any variables right now, and we should get the same result. When we refresh, we have our posts. So that is great, and nothing has changed. We're literally just essentially doing the same thing in a different way. However, what we can now do is if we import, and you're going to need to install SWR. Sorry, I already did that. So if you do npm install SWR like this, and then start your dev server again, we're going to use the use SWR hook, and we're going to do that right underneath where we've used our use state hook. So if we take data and error equals use SWR, and then this is going to start to look weird. So the first thing that I want to look at is we're going to be using some variables. Now in the query variables, I've got this set up down here. We're going to pass JSON. So I'm going to call it search. Let's just call it search value. And I'm going to give that an empty string right now. And then the way we do this is we're going to write query, because it's a query, get posts. And then inside of here, we're going to take the posts and we'll pull off what we want. So we want the ID, title, the date, the slug, and I think we take the author's name. That should work. We're getting a bit of an error here because we're not using this variable. Do we have a description? Cool. So let's leave it at that for now. I don't think. So we got the title, date, description, and author's name. That's cool. So now what we want to do is we want to do the posts. So let's order them by. We want to use the date descending. And then in this get posts here, we're going to declare our search value variable, which is going to be a string. And then we are going to say where, and we want to do title contains the search value, just like that. Let's prettify that and do that. So now if we change the search value, you can see at the moment the search value is an empty string, so we're not getting any filtering at all on that. But if we change this query variable here, which we're passing to get posts, to fetch, you can see here fetch in YouTube channel, and we run the query again, we have now just got the one result, which is exactly what we want. When we type in our search bar and it runs this query, we just want it to return the ones that have this search query in the title. Perfect. So let's take this query and let's start getting it into our hook. So we're going to pass the endpoint. Let me grab that again. So we've got the endpoint, the query. The variable here is just going to be the search value. But what I actually want to do, if you read into the SWR documentation, it shows why we're doing it like this. Basically, it's to prevent, if we pass an object as a variable, it's going to continually fetch data, and we really don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the endpoint and the query. I'm going to use our fetcher function, which has the endpoint, the query, and then we're going to pass in here the search value, like so. And I think, yeah, and then we need to also pass our initial. We also need to pass, yeah, here, our initial. We've got our search value. This should be an array. So we pass an array of arguments to this. So the search value is the last one in the array. And then we can pass our initial data, which is going to be our posts, like so. So I know that that is pretty complicated, it seems. Hopefully this makes sense. We're essentially in a roundabout way using our fetcher function with the endpoint query, and then our variable, which is going to be this JSON search value here, which is of course coming from our search value state, and then we're using the use SWR hook with the endpoint and the query like that. So what we need to do now is, instead of doing post.map, we're going to do data.post.map, because we are giving this to our posts were given to this hook as well. And then we don't need this console log, but what we can do is, if we can say, because we're also taking any errors, so if we can say if there's an error, we can just return a div. Let's do it like this, div, go away. If there's an error, return a div. Why is it not auto-completing? Div with a h2 of, there was an error with the data fetching. Like so. Now if we've done this correctly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another argument here, revalidate on focus to true. And what this does, basically when we tab out and come back in, it's going to perform another data fetch to refetch the data. So if I just refresh the page and go into our network tab, let's have a look at what is happening. So our initial data is not actually loading. So data equals await fetcher posts, data.posts. We got posts here. Initial data equals posts. I think this is why. There we go. Perfect. So we've got our initial data now. And if I switch tabs and come back, you can see there's more requests being made. So we've got 3 objects. The search value is nothing. If I now type in fetching, you can see it's filtering it down to what we actually want. Next. So I like it where it's making a request on a keystroke. I think where you look at modern websites nowadays, if you're searching someone on Facebook or you're searching video on YouTube or even on Google, you're getting instant feedback as you're typing. And I think this is actually a really cool way to go about it. You could set this up differently if you wanted to have a button. It would be quite different to set it up like that. However, if you use the SWR documentation, you should be able to figure it out. But I really like it doing it like this, so that it gives you that instant feedback for the users. So this is how we will do searching. And like I said, I know that this seems quite complicated. However, we've got our fetcher function here, which is essentially just using this this request from GraphQL request. I don't know where this div has come from. Our fetcher function here, we're giving it the endpoint and the query, and that's been run in get static props, and that's given us our static data. The static data has been passed to the use SWR hook, which once the page is loaded, it is then taken over on the client side. Now, again, it looks weird. We're passing the endpoint and the query to the use SWR hook along with the search value, which is a variable, but then we're actually running it inside of this other function. Like I say, if we just passed the variable here and we didn't do this, it would actually still work. However, if I can demonstrate this, it's probably going to give us some sort of infinite request situation going on. Yeah, so you can see what's going on here. Yeah, so there's no query found. Potentially. It does. The ordering doesn't seem to be right. It does work, but my point is this object will be created new every single time, and it will give you infinite data requests if you get that set up correctly. So it will work, but yeah, you will just make hundreds of requests in a matter of 10-20 seconds while someone's on the page, which is not what we want. So to type fetch, we're making 5 requests, but actually we're giving instant feedback to the users. So I like that. I think it's worth it. So hopefully this shows you how to do search. Now, the next thing that I want to cover is pagination. And it's very, very similar the way we're going to do it. We're going to be doing it within the client side as well, and we're going to just pass more parameters to here. So we use the first and the skip. So if you want to give that a try on your own, you're going to need some state to track the current page that you're on, and then you will update your request. You will have the variable also for the current page. So you might have not just a search value, you will also have, current page. So then when the current page changes, you will skip the first, if it's page 1 and you're having 4 per page, for example, you'll skip the first 4. So have a look at that and see if you can figure it out on your own. If not, then there is a video coming about it really soon. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next one.